Night in the Woods is a game that was released back in 2017 to positive critical buzz. Since then, it has gained a strong cult following of dedicated fans and has had a profound effect on many people. I'd like to talk about how the game tackles issues of mental health, existential dread, feeling of choices not mattering in an uncaring, unfeeling world. Fun! From this point on, I'm going to be spoiling the entire game, so consider this your warning. If you haven't played the game and you like story-focused games with great writing, or you're just a big old furry, go play it. It's very good. You play as May, who has just dropped out of college to return to the small town she grew up in, Possum Springs. She arrives back home late, disappointed her parents have not come to pick her up, so you make your way home, puzzle platforming your way there. Following this, you wake up the next morning and the game's cycle starts. The game is broken up into days. Each day you go around interacting with the townsfolk, watching their stories unfold. There's plenty of interactions to be had and plenty of things that you'll miss on a first playthrough. I know I certainly did. You choose what friend you want to hang out with each day, picking between Greg and B most of the time, with the opportunity to hang out with the third character, Angus, later. The hangout scenes are unique and have their own self-contained story arcs depending on who you spend the most time with. You are locked out of the other characters' story scenes for that playthrough. So if you decide to spend time with Greg the first day, you will not get to see B's hangout scene unless you play through the game a second time. On the subject of the characters, you have Greg, an energetic punk fox who works at the 7-Eleven, the Snack Falcon. Angus, a soft-spoken bear who works at the video rental store and who is Greg's other boyfriend. And finally, Bay, an alligator? Correction, a goth crocodile who works at her dad's handyman store. There is also Germ and Laurie, who have their own hangout scenes that add to the themes of the game, but they are entirely optional to progress through the story, and I won't be focusing on them very much. Outside of this, there are many small interactions, secrets, light puzzles, band practice, feeding rodents, stolen pretzels, all this occasionally broken up with set pieces like May taking part in a play that's held at B's store. A chapter in Night in the Woods consists of May waking up, normally sometime in the mid-afternoon, making her way through town and talking to literally everybody if you're playing the game properly. Doing this, you see many side characters' stories unfold, such as Bruce, a homeless vagrant living on the grounds of the town church, or Mrs. Rosa, an elderly lady who tells you stories about May's family history within the town, particularly regarding her grandfather. After this, you decide who you want to spend your evening with and play through that character's scenes, which end with you being taken back to your family home. With the exception of the first few days, every day in-game ends with May going back to bed and dreaming. During these sequences, the art style changes, the music becomes more ethereal as you explore a weird, distorted version of Possum Springs. And, of course, you talk to God at one point, but we'll get to that later. At about the midpoint of the game, just after taking part in a play about Possum Springs, May sees what she thinks is a ghost kidnapping somebody. After a chase, she comes across a mysterious figure. The next series of days go by with May choosing who to interact with on a ghost investigation, uncovering more information about the characters and the town of Possum Springs. You'll never be able to do every ghost investigation because the plot moves forward with the gang discovering a group of cultists and witnessing a murder. Shortly after this, May gets violently sick, and it is revealed that she left college because she had a full-blown mental breakdown, unable to see any other characters as little more than shapes, feeling entirely disassociated from the world. After discussions with her friends and pizza, the world's greatest medicine, May mounts an expedition into the mines that the town was built on top of, discovering a group of cultists killing children that they deem to have no value and throwing them into a hole containing an ancient force that they believe will bring back the prosperity of the town. They have been doing this for years. A previous victim includes one of the group's old friends, Casey, who comes up a lot in conversations. After escaping the cultists who get trapped in a mine collapse, May falls down a hole and interacts with the entity the cultists have been sacrificing to, and has the following interaction. May escapes up a well being cheered on by her friends, unable to really tell people what happened as they wouldn't believe her. After this, a new day starts and you have one final chance to interact with the townsfolk. You begin band practice again and the game ends. Well, that was intended to be a quick rundown of the game's events, but hey ho. I want to take a point to talk about a big reason I believe the game has hit a chord with so many people. It's relatability. Now, I'm not a 20-year-old cat girl, but I am a 20-year-old human boy who has used their film degree for literally nothing since graduating. I don't live in an American ex-mining town, but I did grow up in a commuter town not far from London. May is a highly relatable character. There's so many different elements to her struggle that at least one facet of her character is going to hit very close to home, and has done so for a lot of people. There will be something in the setting that reminds you of home, something in May and her friends that let you see yourself or somebody else you know thanks to the excellent writing. The original goal of the creators was to create a game dealing with mental health.
We knew at that point that there were certain themes that we wanted to tackle. Like, all of us had dealt with, mental health issues in our life, had dealt with depression.
That's something that most of us have had to struggle with at one time or another. Thoughts and feelings that make us feel small, insignificant. That, to me, is what the game is really about. Nihilism, I think, is something most of us have had to deal with in our lives. The feelings of insignificance, that nothing matters, that you're not important. May acts out committing crimes to feel something. At the start of the game, she dangerously falls on a broken branch and it makes her feel alive because nothing else does. In one of the Greg scene, May dies for a second, and rather than some great revelation, she instead sees Sharky, the mascot of her computer desktop. May rejects because she feels disassociated from the world. Life is meaningless, just shapes. Night in the Woods has an extremely strong thematic through-line about its nihilistic protagonist, underpinning almost every element of the game with it. Possum Springs is a dying town, once thriving, and the cultists are unable to let go of that. May's mental breakdown came because she was unable to face the world, unable to feel connected to it anymore. Decisions you make within the game have no effect on the overall outcome, outside of extra dialogue. There is no Greg will remember this, creating the illusion that other games do. In most other cases this would be a negative, but Night in the Woods uses it to underline its message. During my first playthrough I was dreading interactions with B because I had chosen to interact with Greg most of the time because he's the best boy. I kept expecting this to result in some kind of falling out between May and B, or for something to happen because I wasn't there. This never came to pass. Who you choose to interact with changes nothing of the overall outcome of the story, it only changes what scenes you witness. It makes no difference whether you feed the possums pretzels, if you go hang out with Germ, if you find the musicians, if you get astrology lessons. You never learn who the cultists are, what the horror under the town is, it's all pointless. Existential horror is a genre of fiction that aims to scare you by making you feel insignificant. That there are entities in the world so beyond you that your very existence is less than nothing to them. The entity in Night in the Woods, the Black Goat, is something like this. It doesn't care about the town, its cultists, you. The sacrifices made to it meant nothing, it merely wanted to feed. It's human nature to ascribe that actions have meaning. The cultists thought that they could influence events. They can't. You think you have a say on how the game ends? You don't. Your choices do not matter. May ends up the same character regardless of what you say. Hell, many dialogue options are just variations of the same thing. During one of May's dream sequences, she meets a giant cat whom she assumes to be God. The creature acts annoyed by this question. It has watched back and witnessed humanity grow and evolve, utterly uninterested in it. May wakes up from her dream, convinced it was God that she met. She talks to her parents, friends, family, none of who take her seriously. This is where May starts to take a decline in the story, her feelings of insignificance having an effect on her mentally and physically. This interaction is incredibly significant. It's May's outlook on life at this point in the game. She's insignificant. God does not care about anything and nothing matters. Every character in the game has to deal with their insignificance somehow. For some, like May's mother and the preacher and even Bea, it's religion. For some, it's finding a goal to work to, like Greg and Angus. For some, it's just living as it comes, finding something to focus on, like Germ. May has yet to find a coping mechanism, until the game's conclusion at least. May, after her interaction with the occultists and seeing them murder somebody, becomes sick to the point of being barely able to move. This is the point in the game where she opens up about her mental breakdown and why she left college. The scene is her trying to be comforted by her friends. May is experiencing existential dread so strongly that it is making her physically ill, at least that's my interpretation of events. She decides she needs to face down the horror that the cultists are sacrificing to alone and in her weakened state. This is where she discovers that they are sacrificing children to the creature for the prosperity of the town. It is only when her friends try to back her up that she feels better. She is able to face the beast when she falls and is alone with it. It is because of her friends that she is able to overcome her feelings of dread, her feelings of insignificance. Because things do matter, even if nothing is permanent. It matters in the now. Who you choose to interact with has no effect on the story, but the scenes are worth experiencing in their own right. Your friends, family, loved ones are worth the time you spend with them. Your interactions don't matter, but what does matter is that you have had them. They mattered to you. So what if it doesn't have an effect on how things end? When everything looks bleak, find something that matters to you. Be it friends, family, hobbies, pizza, games, being in a band, knife fighting in the woods, going to a dying mall. Everything does eventually end. So at the end of everything, hold on to something. Hold on to anything.